Raghu Markus is the founder of the Mindrolling podcast, and he is also the executive director of the Love Serve Remember Foundation. He's a very close and personal friend with the world-renowned spiritual teacher Ram Dass, and in this interview we have a beautiful discussion about what it was like to be so close to a highly revered spiritual teacher like Ram Dass. So if you would like to see more interviews like this one, then click the link right below me now to subscribe to Meditation Magazine.
Let's just start with Ram Dass, and my relationship with him, goes back to when he first came back from India in the late 60s when I was real young, and I was running a radio station in Montreal. That's how I met him. And so his people called to ask us to promote that he was giving a talk at McGill University. So off I went into something that I had no idea what was going to happen. I mean, I said, send me over a tape. I didn't know who Ram Dass was. I knew Richard Alpert and Tim Leary quite well. So they sent me over a tape. It was one of those things, like most people who hear Ram Dass the first time go, oh my God, right. Every word is ringing a bell, and it rang all the bells for me in terms of that there was a path to fulfillment, happiness, freedom, whatever you want. I mean, I had been into stuff before that. It wasn't brand new to me, but still. So then I went over to meet him. And then when I met, he was just alone in a house in Montreal. And then he just opened the door, and we were just, right there with each other, just a few feet away. And that incredible presence that he had from the get-go, just enveloping. So he completely gave me total attention and enveloped me in this unconditionality. There was no Richard, there was no Ram Dass. It was just me in a pool that he had created so that I could luxuriate in this tremendous feeling of love and trust, basically. And from that, and then he came to the station, then we started playing we put his lectures on the switchboard lit up. I mean, people were like, wow, what's this, So from there, I got to India. I badgered him, as did a number of people, including Krishna Das, who I'm sure you know who that is, because he wasn't supposed to say anything about Maharaji said, Neem Karoli Baba said, don't talk about me in America. And that's all he did. And at some point I asked him not that long ago, why did you do that? He told you not to. I mean, I knew that this is all a setup from Maharaji, Neem Karoli Baba, we called Maharaji as a nickname. But he said, I brought back this jewel and I could not share it. And that's the essence of who he is and what he's done, has done, all these decades until he passed. And it's going to continue because he set up the way that he actuated recording everything just about that he did all those decades. I mean, we have a tremendous amount of titles of his, of all sorts of subjects, and not just him, but he interfaced with many, many people. And that continued in the last 15 years in Maui, and actually in Ojai, where we do retreats as well, where we have a number of teachers and close people from those years, primarily Buddhists. So we have this real connection, Bhakti Buddhist, Bhakti meaning Bhakti Yoga, which, the tradition that we come from, but it's mixed with this Buddhist discriminating wisdom, I call it. And that mixture is really unique to what the foundation represents, what is really Neem Karoli Baba, what is Ram Dass. And so, fortunately, as a result, we have a tremendous amount of offerings that we continue to make into the digital world, into the physical world through retreats and books and movies. And um, we're going to have a Ram Dass Be Here Now exhibit. It'll be an experience of going through a portal, and just like his teachings will be revealed as you go. We're just designing it right now, so I can't even say what it is because we don't know, but we have a good idea, and that's going to be a wonderful experience that'll be taken around the country. It may be eventually land up in a museum or library. You know, we have more films coming. We have this wonderful film, Becoming Nobody, which is still playing and about to start streaming in the next couple of months. Not sure where yet. And that's a definitive representation of both Ram Dass's core teachings, and also thematically, it's about a somebody that eventually becomes a nobody. So that that's a beautiful film. I'm a little bit subjective since I produced it, but I still think it's a beautiful film. It is available as a download DVD right now. You go to ramdass.org, you'll find it. You just search around, or just go to iTunes, basically, or Google. So yeah, we're fortunate in that all of this vast archive, and we continue to produce new content through these retreats that we do. We film everything. We're live streaming stuff. I mean, so fortunately, we have we continue this legacy.
Yeah, that's sounds like a good plan. I want to ask you a little bit more about your experience of Ram Dass maybe over the years. So you started out meeting him through the radio station. Was that during the psychedelic years, or was that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
that was still during the psychedelic years. So he went through this kind of evolution over the course of his life, where he started with a lot of psychedelics, and then over time sort of evolved more toward the meditation side. I know he's always been, both have been a big part of his life, but were you able to witness that transformation? Do you remember him being sort of different over that period of time, like when he was in the psychedelic times, like the psychedelic space, versus when he had sort of moved more into the meditation focus?
It's not quite correct. He did not, there's not a delineated line, psychedelics, meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And meditation isn't the right word. Probably his pursuit of a map of consciousness is what led him from psychedelics to India. But that didn't mean he stopped taking psychedelic. Obviously, nothing like he used to, but he certainly still engaged and experimented after he came back from India. Much less, but it was still there. So it was much more fluid, and his involvement had nothing to do either with just psychedelics or just meditative practices, or it had to do with a lot of things. It had to do with, of course, those things. It had to do with service, the development of working with dying people, working with compassion. All of these things went into a big stew, and that's why Ram Dass is really great, because he investigated so many different traditions, right? And so, everyone's got a little bit of a different penchant towards one thing or another that turns them on in terms of spiritual path, a practice. So the fact that he had experience in so many of them, was a great thing. And it allowed people to be able to enter into these different streams, whichever one appealed to them. So, but for him, in terms of his involvement, it was everything. It wasn't one thing or another. It was everything that I mean, he wrote a book, Grist for the Mill. You know, everything that's in front of you and that you are engaging with is spiritual path. And that was, you know, a great teacher. So when he had the stroke in 97, 8, whenever it was, he had, you know, of course, the gift taken away, his gift of, you know, being able to put a large audience into a spellbound kind of trance, you know, and get them totally conversant with some of these very complex teachings that he had assimilated in the East. And he was able to translate them into a Western idiom, which is why, you know, people love Ram Dass. That's one of the main reasons that people love him. You know, he puts it into plain English, you know, and people are able to absorb it in a way that may be difficult just if you just like are reading the Gita or something, you know, or getting taught from, you know, some wonderful Tibetan teachers, which there are many. So after the stroke, he more and more and more he became who he was. It's hard. It's a little hard for me now. The was, right? You know, it's like he's still here, and he is, just not in that body. Yeah, I would say. I used to say Ram Dass was pointing to the truth, and after the stroke, he really became more of the truth. It wasn't like he was, you know, he never liked to be called a guru because he knows, and, you know, we know, you know, Neem Karoli Baba is a guru. He's a completely finished being. They call them siddhas. He's not living in any duality, which is why he blew our minds. If you imagine meeting somebody that you can't have that kind of, you know, us them thing, you know, there's you, I'm meeting you right now, and I don't know you really, you don't know me, you know, but we're talking about something that kind of brings us together, but there's still, you know, is duality. And if you can imagine somebody who wasn't in it, it's pretty extraordinary. I mean, and so Ram Dass was not fully in that, but he was way more in it than most of us. Let's put it that way. I mean, his thing of loving awareness, which is his basic teaching the last few years, is a very powerful representation of what he was doing on a day-to-day basis. He was living that. He was, every person that came in contact with him, he embraced the way I told you he embraced me. And I don't mean physically, I mean with his vibration. That first day that I met him, nothing has changed all these years. And it's not like before the stroke, he wasn't Ram Dass, he wasn't evolved, he was. But after, you know, and I don't know who could handle such a thing, almost dying of a stroke, and then living another 22, 3 years and teaching. And basically, you know, he was not caught up in the little me, mini me. You remember Mike Myers? Mini me. You know, we are all in our mini me's big time. And so he evolved out of his mini me, his Ram Dass-ness even. And it was a lovely thing to behold and be with him, which is, you know, why so many people in recent years, especially next generation, have, you know, navigated over to what he represents.
Wow. So after the stroke, he actually became more of that non-duality than before. If I'm understanding.
I wouldn't say becoming more of non-duality is too intellectual. He became Maharaji Neem Karoli Baba's teaching to us and to him was, you know, there was a few of them. I mean, he didn't talk, he didn't give talks, he didn't write books or anything. He would say things, Ram Dass, love everyone and tell the truth, you know. And Ram Dass, that's what happened. He embodied that more and more after his stroke.
Love everyone and tell the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Not easy, right?
yeah, it's a practice.
Yeah, well, and Ramdas said at the time when he said that, I was like, Maharaji, I can't love, I don't love everybody, and I certainly can't tell them the truth, but he understood eventually. Maharaji was talking to the soul inside, behind the mini me, and that soul could tell the truth and could love everyone, and that's what happened with Ramdas after, in a major way after the stroke.
Wow. So to me, love everyone is a pretty clear instruction. It's you know there's people think about love in different ways. Like some people think of it like love, the word meaning romantic love, and some people
Mm.
think of it meaning like liking certain things about the person very much. But like to me, love is something sort of unconditional. I guess it's really just semantics, but to me, like love is an unconditional thing that you can just it's an action. You can love people whether or not you like certain attributes about them. It doesn't matter. The love is something that you can do. It's an action, right?
Yeah.
So to me, the love is a little bit of a more clear instruction. I don't really understand the tell the truth instruction, because there's so many different truths that you can tell, so many different things that you could say to a person. What do you think he meant by that? Tell the truth.
No, I don't think it's complex. Tell the truth. When you're not telling the truth to somebody. Okay, period. And it's manipulation and it's motivation to get what we want, right? We're bending it. We're, little white lie, whatever. Yeah, no, it's simple, direct. Tell the truth. Stop fucking around with people, in terms of trying to get what you want by not telling the truth.
So it's sort of like that radical honesty thing. That's been sort of in the there's like this sort of radical honesty movement that happened I don't know, recently. Something like that where you just really no matter what it is, even if it's something that maybe is gonna be painful to the other person to hear, or something that is gonna go against your own interests, obviously, like things, just anything that you want to communicate.
Yeah, I mean, anything like that's why mindfulness practice is great. And Ram Dass taught it when he first came back from India. He called it just using the non-judgmental witness from the heart space, not the ego head. So mindfulness is great, and you realize what you see your motivations very clearly. Now sometimes it's not like you go tell somebody like who's overweight, say, hey, you're really overweight. You ought to do something. That's just crack, nutball shit that the people, and they do it just, it's not, it can be offensive. It's people, I mean, that's just a gross example, but there's a lot of more subtle examples of people saying one thing to, oh, I'm going to tell you my truth here, and it's deprecate, it's not needed. So there's a discriminating wisdom involved here. And that's why, again, looking at your perspective and working on yourself through mindfulness and not the bullshit mindfulness that makes you a better stockbroker, but I mean the one and I'll tell you, your audience, Joseph Goldstein wrote a book called Mindfulness that is extraordinary. And please go get that book, and you can really understand what that practice is and how to use it in your life in a way that's going to be a gigantic improvement. All right. I mean, and in fact, just to give my own little promo, I have a podcast called Mindrolling on the Be Here Now Network. You go to BeHereNowNetwork.com. And I just did something with Joseph Goldstein around loss and grief and how to deal with anxiety and fear. I mean, he is so clear coming from that place. So, yeah, it's not cut. Everything isn't like cut. Well, tell the truth, and you go spieling off stuff to everybody that you can have in front of you, because now you're going to be a radical truth. It's much more subtle than that, and you got to just feel it in terms of what you are doing with the Buddhist, the Eightfold Path, the right speech is very important, and that's tied into telling the truth. I want to go back to what we were talking about, love, right? And the love that we're talking about, as you said, it's not romantic love. It's not a love that, I love you, you better love me back kind of thing, it is unconditional, and it's not something that happens just like that. I mean, it's a lifetime of work to get there. It's, Ram Dass to a great degree did get there. I mean, but I just saw something I thought I'd share with you around this, and it's from the 17th Karmapa. So 17th Karmapa is one of the highest lamas, reincarnate lamas, and close to the Dalai Lama. And he said, I have observed a strange idea of love that many people seem to have. They see love as a kind of gift that has to be given back. Someone says, I love you. And if the other person does not reply with an I love you too, the first person gets upset. But love doesn't always have to be reciprocated. We can just love. If love doesn't come back to you, it is still love that you give and that you feel. We do not always have to look to get something back for what we give, do we? Right? I just love, I mean, he's fantastic, by the way. He's like 33 years old or something. Anybody ever gets a chance to see him, he's extraordinary, honest and real, and he's really great for next generation. He's all about the environment. He's about women's rights. He's fantastic. Anyhow, a little diversion there to the 17th Karmapa.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing, pure love. And when you talk about Maharaji being sort of in that pure love and that oneness, non-duality all the time,
yeah,
it sort of blows my mind, because I guess I never met anybody that's fully like that. Did you ever meet Maharaji? Is he would you say he's like the only person that you met that was like that?
Yeah, no, as I said earlier, when I met Ram Dass, he got him to get me hooked up, and I went to India. I followed Ram Dass to India after he went back the second time, as did a number of other people like Krishna Das, and we met him, and we met him over a 3-year period. Some of us spent shorter, longer. I was there for a year and a half. Yeah. Did I ever meet anyone else like that?
Yeah.
16th Karmapa.
Oh, wow.
The predecessor of this, who I just read this thing of the 17th, his predecessor I met in LA not long before he died, but he gave what was called the Black Hat ceremony. And I tell this story many times, but when he was seeing everybody would come up and pass by him, and he put a silk scarf. Yeah, you had a silk scarf, and he put it on you, and all, as part of the ceremonial thing. When I got, I don't know, 10 feet away from him, and I was standing in line, I felt his vibration. I went, oh my God, this is Neem Karoli Ba. It was the same thing. Wow. And, and I've since then, of course, I've spend a lot of time with his teachings and so on, and I have friends like Lama Surya Das who studied with him. So yeah, Ananda Mahima, that was also somebody, a great saint, women saint in India. Not many. They do, there for every 1,000 saints, there's like 5 siddhas. The siddhas are the beings that are able to stay in a body, yet they are not living in duality. Wow. Apparently, that's not something anybody can do. They're just here for everyone else. They don't give talks. They don't write books. They just hang out. And that's all he did. He hung out on this bed, the tucket, we called it, and with a bunch of 20-year-old hippies.
Yeah.
Okay, why the hell did that happen? I don't know, but look at what's happened since then, since Ram Dass came back, and Krishna Das, and all of us. There's people like Larry Brilliant, who helped cure smallpox that's in the early 70s. You know, Danny Goleman, who wrote this beautiful book called Emotional Intelligence that everyone should read. Krishnadas, you know, and what I'm doing, and the podcast net, you know, all of this stuff. So these little hippies, I guess he had something in mind for them.
Yeah. The only person that I've met that kind of strikes a similarity there is Amma. I don't know if you've met Amma
Yep.
from southern India.
And she's a lovely saint.
Yeah. And yeah, just living for other people. But how do you think someone like Neem Karoli Baba becomes that? Do you think it's a process of hard work over a period of a life, or do you think it's just something that comes natural to people? What do you think?
No. It does not come natural to anybody. I would have no idea how this works. Okay, it's the part of the mystery, you know, that we have to respect. But no, he came in. I mean, there wasn't any training or nothing. You know, I think these beings. One thing, I know he did do austerities, like you know, as a teenager and into his 20s and stuff like that. So maybe there's some way in which, you know, the nerve endings got to get aligned with the power. I don't know. I mean, that's just a wild guess. No, this is not, you know, and there's no way of understanding that. There's another being in India who died in the early part of last century named Shirdi Sai Baba, who is also the same as Maharaji in terms of, you know, and they had extraordinary spiritual powers. I mean, appearing in two places at once. Shirdi Sai Baba could take off his limbs, wash them, and put them back. You know, crazy shit that your readers or listeners would like, what? You know, but I have experienced Neem Karoli Baba, and I know everything is possible. There is nothing that's not possible for a being that is completely at one with whatever you want to call that thing, Buddha mind, God, you know, whatever you want to call the thing, Ein Sof, Ein Sof, you know, it's, you know, when that's nothing that we can ever conceive of in our minds, but, you know, Ram Dass and us, we experienced it. It's real. It's nothing that can't be possible in this universe.
So in Be Here Now, Ram Dass had talked about Maharaji a bit, well, a lot. He talked about Maharaji's ability to see things that normal humans couldn't. For example, when Ram Dass, as Richard Alpert, arrived there, Maharaji told him that you know, he had been dreaming about his mother and been able to diagnose the liver issues and
no, just to make it straight, so you know, Ram Dass went out a few nights before he met him to just take a leak, and he just looked at the stars and started thinking about his mother, who had died earlier that year, within a year before. And then when he got to Maharaji just told him that whole story and said her spleen got big, she died, you know, like that, and used the English word spleen. When that happened, he fell apart, because there's no way anybody could know anything like that. But he did that to all of us, every one of us who came to India and met with him. He broke, you know, it's just breaking minds. He broke our minds, so we no longer could think that's who we were. No way.
So the stories in Be Here Now, including, you know, that one and the giving Maharaji the acid, like the LSD, and him sort of just like saying, this is like, you know, this is cool, but it's like, it didn't like trip him out that much.
No, nothing happened. There's no trip out that much. Nothing happened. Zero.
Right. Yeah. So these are pretty amazing stories. What was the thing that tripped you out the most that you saw personally with Maharaji?
What, miraculous thing, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, there's so many of them. I'd rather not even, you know, for people focusing on that, it gets into, okay, you know, either that you can't believe such a thing, or you got it and I didn't. You know, it's not the most amazing thing is the way in which sitting with him, we were overwhelmed by this a molecular injection, an injection into our very molecules of this vibration, and love doesn't say it. Okay, it's something that just permeated us and allowed us to stop thinking about ourselves. Number one, time and space went away, and we were just in the most extraordinary peace, bliss, you know, all of it. And
Wow.
yeah. Now that wasn't going on all the time, because the other thing that was happening is it was a mirror. It was a mirror to see just the horror of your craziness, you know, our crazy minds. And, you know, I would like go, oh, Jesus, he's going to kick my ass out. No, because we knew he knew everything that was going on, past, present, future, in your mind, whatever it was. So I was always afraid I'm the worst human that ever lived because of the thoughts that I'm so stuck to. He's going to throw me out, you know. So we had that going on as well. But in that direct presence, it was just an extraordinary experience. And it wasn't about the miracles. It was about the vast presence that you read about in books. Like we used to read about it in Yogananda's book, Autobiography of a Yogi. If you know that book, that's a great book, by the way. That was kind of the book that we all read before we went to India. And once we got there, we were like, holy shit, we're in the middle of this book now, you know, with this kind of a being. And you know, so yeah, it was that presence that we had no choice but to just like fall into, you know, like you fall into a warm hot tub and you just completely let go. You know that feeling? Or a warm ocean. You know, water is a good analogy. And just, you know, the kind of letting go that I had never ever had experienced before.
Wow. What does that look like in a person? And you've described it in a lot of ways, but to me, I'm trying to wrap my head around it. Is it just like complete and intense presence? Is it like just being here completely, as Ram Dass would say, be here now, just completely in the moment? Or was it something beyond that?
Have you done a psychedelic?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And the psychedelic, it comes on, and then suddenly your reality switches from that, you know, mind ego perspective into another perspective that maybe you're not sure what that perspective is, but it sure feels great and a lot different. And you sort of are just like flowing in a moment basis, right? You're not thinking about yourself, you're just flowing. Things, objects are coming, you're merging with them, you're just delighting in them. Okay, that gives a glimpse of what that reality is. And Ram Dass has said this, you know, he many a time. He said, he said, the fact that I had all of that psychedelic experience gave me a handle in terms of being able to fathom this being named Karoli Baba. So, yeah, I think that's a good analogy, although it's not, you know, as Maharaji said about it, he said, this is good. It gets people, you know, in the beginning, it gets you to, he said, how he put it was have darshan, be in the presence of Christ for a couple hours, divine presence. But then you got to come back. It's better to eventually, you know, feed people. That's what that'll get you there. And ultimately, by the way, that is what gets you there. It is the fact that you stop, you know, in this movie, Becoming Nobody, Ram Dass at some point says, when is what you need enough? You know, or he says, when I need enough? When is what I want enough? You know, it's much more interesting to serve people and care. And once you start to do that, swimming in that kind of free, peace oriented environment, it starts to happen a lot more easily than even you know, doing 1 billion hours of meditation.
Wow. Yeah, that's so. I'm trying to still kind of get into this space that Maharaji and I guess Ram Dass over time we're trying to get into, which is, so it sounds almost like this almost like an acid trip, but like I guess without the hallucinogenic visuals, maybe something sort of like that. Do you like I'm assuming since it's very present moment oriented, you don't have all those tripped out thought trains, you know what I mean, like from that you get from psychedelics.
Yeah, and that they happen. You know, I mean, I guess I'm talking about when you peak. You know, when you just everything shifts. That moment that everything shifts, and you feel this loving presence, and anybody who's around you, you are in that loving presence with them. That's really it's not
Living in that.
it's not complex. It is
Yeah.
just living in that.
Living in that, and then when you're living in that, suddenly I mean, you are full, you don't need really anything in that state, so then you
Yeah,
can turn your attention toward serving others and
yeah,
feeding
that's it.
others, like you were
That's
saying.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. And Ram Dass over time, I mean, from Richard Alpert, working at Harvard, I'm assuming, you know, that at that point he was a little bit more stuck in his ego from what he's talked about in his, all I've seen is videos over time. You know, he talked about uh, the psychedelics bringing him out of his ego a bit, and then moving away from his ego more as he met Maharaji and
Yeah.
going into that whole path. So over time, you know, he was sort of moving into that, and I've seen just from like his talks, and it seemed like he was moving toward that. But did you ever see him in that peak state, or was it more like he never really got fully to that state, or he just
You mean
went in
on
and out of
acid?
it?
On
Yeah,
psychedelics?
either way, on psychedelics or on meditation or anything. Did he ever get to that peak that you felt from Maharaji, or did he maybe go in and out of it, or did he just always sort of?
No, no, he's not Maharaji. Okay. Where he did get was, all right, the best way here, I'll give you an example because I don't want to make it too much part of mind stuff. One day last year, I was staying with him, and it was morning time, and he hadn't come downstairs for breakfast. I had a lot of stuff in my head about whatever I was producing with him, you know, whether it be a retreat, whatever I was doing. So I had a bunch of things. I got to talk to Ram Dass. I got to get it. We got to get this straight now. We got all the meetings of this. I got to do film guys coming out, whatever. So I ran upstairs because I needed to do it right away. And I go in, and he's in his bathroom, and he was like shaving. He looked up at me coming in, you know, with all that energy. And he just carefully put the razor down on the counter, on the sink. And he just encountered me with his eyes, the way he first did when I met him the very first time. And everything in my head went away. Okay, all the stuff that I was wanting to produce with him, gone. And I was just inhabiting that moment with him. I mean, you know, fortunately, I've enough sense to let go, you know, as soon as I saw him, and we just let go into this space for a few minutes, a couple of minutes. And it was total loving presence, as he used to call it. We burrowed into the moment. Simple as that, you know, and he had that ability to do that. because he was just less caught, less attached to thoughts, less, just less concerned about the his concern was presence, not about mental gyrations that we all have and we think are real important and we chase. His concern was presence, not the mental gyrations.
Well, and a lot of people living in this society, we have to work, we have to do things to make things happen. In that moment, how did that work out for the thing you were producing? Were you able to end up making it work, or did you have to just kind of forget about it?
No, we don't forget. We're living in the world. There's no forgetting nothing. Whatever. I made it happen. However, it just didn't need to happen in that moment. And I let go of it. So later on, whatever, I probably talked to him and we got straight about what we needed to do. It's just an example of how present he was to just be, in loving awareness moment.
Yeah.
At a drop of a hat.
That's beautiful. And did he go in and out of that over the course of his life? Like, was he sometimes very intensely in that moment and sometimes getting into the drama?
I mean, he was more, he spent more time in that moment. And it's also a result of him not being able to go travel around the country and lecture and drive his thing, go play golf, listen, in the grand scheme of things, it's not like nature gave him a stroke. Maharaji gave him a way to deal with it and to use it profitably to become more of who he was.
Yeah. I guess what I'm asking is because, I guess anybody who meditates or is on that path, they have these moments of intense presence. And then also, I mean, for myself, I can speak for myself, moments of intense presence during meditation and sometimes during just daily life. And then sometimes moments of anxiety or getting too into the mental gyrations, like what you were saying. So I guess what makes me what I'm curious about is, was Ram Dass sort of always living in that presence, or did he also have those moments of anxiety or mental gyration? And I'm sure when he was younger, obviously, as Richard Alpert, he probably mostly spent a lot of that time in the thought processes, and then as time went on, he probably evolved. And then after the stroke, he probably spent more of the time, like you were saying, in the presence. But was there ever a period where he was just always in the presence, or was it for his whole life, as far as you knew him, sort of going from one state to the other?
No one's always in the presence except a being like Neem Karoli Baba. So yeah, he spent more time in it, Ram Dass, in the latter part of his life when he was these last 15 years on Maui. He certainly did. And it's not like he didn't spend time in that presence, before that. But certainly at this last part of his life, he was, he spent a bunch of time just being in that presence, for sure. I'd walk upstairs, he'd be in his chair looking at the ocean, just be here. He was be here now. Without the aphorism is like, oh yeah, everybody in the be here now. It's like Coke, Pepsi or something, right?
Yeah.
But he lived it.
Yeah. And I mean, was the stroke a very big turning point for him to be much more in the presence than before that?
Yep, absolutely. Not right away. It took time, for him to, recover enough, and surrender. And, like he said, I wrote a book, how can I help? Now I need a book, how can you help me? And he had to deal with that. That was his mental gyration. He had to deal with that.
Yeah.
So he did.
Yeah, I remember, he had a documentary come out a few years back. Maybe you were involved in that, where he was saying during the stroke, where he was
Fierce Grace.
yeah, Fierce Grace, when he
Yeah,
was
no, that was
stroked.
Mickey Lemley, a great movie.
Yeah, and that he felt that he had been ready for it. He had been ready for death, and then when he had been stroked, that he realized that he wasn't ready, and he felt that he failed the test.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that was, sort of the last film that I saw of him. Do you feel like he moved past that over the years to like
Yeah,
feel
yeah. Absolutely. He was not afraid of dying.
and
He wasn't looking for. Have you seen Becoming Nobody?
I haven't seen that one yet.
Okay, that you aside from this
Yeah.
lovely interview we're having,
Mhm.
watch Becoming Nobody. Okay, you either buy the download or do, right now it's not streaming yet,
Mhm.
but that is essential, because in it, not only is it do we use all of the great footage we have of Ram Dass teaching, and it has a whole thread from becoming somebody to becoming nobody. It's also his core teachings, and all the way through it is an interview that was done by the director Jamie Caro, that is contemporary Ram Dass. It's a few years ago at this point. And it's a beautiful counterpoint to what you're talking about now. What was Ram Dass like before and after the stroke? So watch that, because that will give you completely, you and whoever else is listening or reading this, context for Ram Dass before stroke and after stroke, in terms of the core teachings that he represents.
Yeah, I definitely will. Thank you. And I just wanted to ask you maybe two other things. One is so reading, Be Here Now. It's a very interesting experience because it's got all this sort of trippy, the trippy stuff.
Yeah.
And this very much reminds me of like my psychedelic experiences and just being in that. But what I've heard so many beautiful words from him, the words that really put you into that state. But I haven't really heard much in terms of his personal meditation practice. I saw maybe one video where he was like the 70s or the 80s or something, where he had this big beard and he was like sitting and meditating. But did he have a consistent meditation practice throughout his life, or was it more just trying to be here now?
No. He, as I said earlier, he experimented with a lot of different practices, including Buddhist practices, and he spent time in over in East Asia doing insight meditation practices, um, mantra practice. I mean, he did it all, and he used it all at different times, for whatever, I guess he felt that would help him to evolve. So no, he had a constant day-to-day practice, absolutely.
And that
when
constant,
when I'm sorry,
go ahead.
just to finish that thought, in Maui later in life, he did far less formal practice, as that practice of just being present. He didn't need to get there, if you know what I mean. He was just needing to sit and look at the ocean, and he love everyone, love everything, and he just did that. So but we still did stuff, chanting and the Hanuman Chalisa he would do, at satsang he would have, he a lot, it was still going on, but it was less formal than before the stroke.
Yeah. So I know I have some people in my life that feel like they don't really need that sit down practice every day. They just try to do the mindfulness of life, like being mindful in everything that they're doing in action. Personally, for me, I feel it's really important to have that morning and evening meditation. Did Ram Dass have that type of structure, or did he live more in the mindfulness of action space?
No, he had total structure.
Mm.
He advised total structure. In fact, anyone who says, oh, I'm just mindful of eating, and I'm mindful of walking, and I'm mindful, it's a good thing, do it. But without a meditative practice, it's not worth shit, because you're easily fooling yourself if you can't get at the deeper levels of understanding yourself. That's what meditation is. It's not about becoming a better anything. It's about understanding yourself. And you know, people that say, yeah, we don't need to do that, it's all open and you know, I don't, yeah, you know, it's just another way of not dealing with yourself.
Yeah. So lastly, I want to ask you, you know, on a personal level, you were close with Ram Dass for a long time, and now that he's gone, does it feel like he's left your life? Does it feel like he's still there? Do you feel, are you able to, does it feel like hard for you emotionally, or is it something like he's still there in your life?
All of it,
Hmm.
all of the above, you know. I mean, that I can't pick up the phone and call him, you know, can't hear that, you know, the sense of humor, you know, that at the same time, you know, it's a constant presence. Everything I do, fortunately, the kind of work that I do, directing the foundation and the podcast network and ramdas.org, you know, I am putting everything through his mind in terms of how people should be treated, in terms of being able to really watch the self-motivation, you know, the self-interest and the motivations. And so he's like with me all the time through that. And the rest is true too, you know, just, you know, of course. As Joseph Goldstein said in that podcast I mentioned, don't conflate loss with grief. And I'll let you all listen to that podcast to understand that concept, which is very important. So I'm trying not to do it myself.
Thank you. Thank you for this beautiful interview.
Sure.
It's very nice to spend this time with you. I feel more centered somehow than at the beginning of the interview. So
Yeah.
somehow that Neem Karoli Baba and Ram Dass energy is flowing through this Zoom call.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks, Kevin.